DJ Nation fam, what is up? What is happening? It's another DFS DJ Nation pod coming to you live for the divisional round slate. And I'm joined by my usual co-host. I'm Ryan Williams, but I go on Twitter by Ryan Alexander _W, joined by my usual co-host, Kevin Steele at FantasyRat13. And we are joined once again, gratefully, by the TQE dynamic duo, Mr. Derek Brown at dbro_FFB and Maddie Dickinson at Maddie DTQE. Fellas, what is going on?
Maddie, I was waiting for you to lead off.
I was waiting for you to
do. The dynamic duo, they can't even get it together.
Well, we didn't talk about who was going to go first. I didn't know this was a Star Wars moment. You talk first, I talk first? How does this go?
Me and Derek literally talk about everything throughout the week, and that's one of the things we didn't talk about was who was going to talk first. But no, I'm doing good, man. It's I was on a pod with Brian Inchikin earlier, KC Bubba on Twitter, and I mentioned to him that this is probably the last week that I'm going to go heavy on NFL. I'll probably play the championship week, but it's going to be a little lighter for me. This will probably be my last heavy week, and so I'm looking forward to going out with a bang on NFL.
Yeah,
Fair
dude.
Enough.
That's exactly how I'm feeling. This last little 4-gamer here, it's time to bank some stuff and ride off into the sunset. Showdown is a wild, wild jungle, dude. I mean, I'll throw some entries in there, but this is the last one I'm really just tossing in the paper for it. So I'm ready, man. We've been I love these short slates. It feels like every time we get one of these like playoff slates, I just feel like I get all this deja vu of like Thanksgiving and all kinds of stuff. I love these damn slates. There's so many great spots you can get leverage, and especially with the teams we got to rock here. Woo-hoo, it looks juicy, fellas. I'm ready.
Oh, it's going to be an interesting one, that's for sure. Wildcard weekend, fellas, anything that you guys want to talk about from that weekend, or just let it be what it is?
Nah, dude. The Saints offensive line screwed everything for me. Like, I went heavy into that game, and it totally flipped the script. Like, they got blown off the line, so, like, it just – Adam Thielen got there and stuff like that. But past that, man, there was a lot of things that I felt like there was surprising, like 2% outcomes that happened with the Saints and Vikings. And then you had the Bills just had the attack plan and the way to advance in that first half. And then after that, they went to the locker room and they were like, all right, all these things that we're doing, that we're ripping them apart and we're winning, let's just do the opposite. Right. Let's not do that shit anymore. Like, that's working too well. So let's do the opposite of whatever doesn't work. So, yeah, I mean, I'm lit. I did not have a total bloodbath, but that weekend could have been a whole lot better, man. I'll say that.
Yeah, I hear you on that, brother. Go ahead, Maddie.
I was just going to say I did have a bloodbath. I lit it up on that game on basically all three of my teams that I played. And, yeah, outside of Thielen, I mean, I was all in on Michael Thomas. He was a bust. Outside of Thielen, it was just not pretty. One of my teams was Diggs, Cousins, Thielen, Stack, running it back with Michael Thomas. And, yeah, I mean, the game just didn't shoot out. But like I was telling Derek earlier today, I said, what would you have said the final score was if I told you Drew Brees went 26 of 33, Dalvin Cook had under 4 yards per carry, and Kirk Cousins went 19 of 31? You would probably tell me the Saints win by 17.
Yep.
And somehow the Vikings pulled it out. So I think that their luck is going to run thin here.
Okay. All right, Kevin. It's been 4 minutes since you said anything. I know you're chomping at the bit. Get in here. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing all right. I just want to see if anybody wants to take my rose this week and match it.
You can get 600 lineups going.
Hell yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
Let's do it, man. I'm totally down for that.
I mean, it's been a wild week on fucking old DFS fucking Twitter, right? We got Bachelor Gate. We got fucking Draft Cheat trying to box people again. I mean, it's been fucking lit in here. I mean, 2020 has been off the chain so far. So I'm ready for it. The Chiefs play on Sunday. The Vikings are going to knock off the 49ers on Saturday. And I think the Vikings go to the Super Bowl, but I know people are crazy, but I think the Vikings are the 2018 Falcons is what I think. I think people are sleeping on this team. This team has way too much offensive talent, And I think people just were overlooking them a little bit, thinking that the Saints were going to roll them, completely forgetting about Dalvin Cook. And, even Diggs didn't do shit. But, I mean, they still have Diggs, they still have Thielen, they still have Kyle Rudolph, and with an above-average defense. Like, I don't know. I think people are sleeping on the Vikings, and I think that's silly. We've seen the 49er defense, for example, really be had, especially, the last half of the season. And there's no reason to tell me that they can't go to San Francisco and knock them off and then head to either Seattle or Green Bay and get a win there. So I don't know. I think people are still sleeping on the Vikings. I think that's ridiculous.
I will say, I think Green Bay and Seattle are both frauds. So I think whichever team comes out of Minnesota, San Francisco is going to the Super Bowl.
Agreed. Yeah, I'll definitely side with that. Green Bay is getting a lot of ink for not being half as damn good as they think they are.
Yeah. Wow. I have money on Seattle. I mean, if they have to host that game against Minnesota, I think that's like just writing on the wall for them to get back there. And Russ, I trust, I guess, if they were to go into Lambeau, handle business, do what they need to do, I feel like they get there. They've been there before. We'll see how Minnesota looks against San Fran. Yeah, we got some good, interesting matchups going on in all the games. I mean, really. So let's get into it and talk about it from the quarterback perspective. We got Lamar Jackson at the top here, who, I mean, we're talking about 300 lineups, Kev. I wonder what your exposure would be to Lamar Jackson. He's 8,400, but what this guy's been doing has just been incredible all season long. Gets a Tennessee defense that really, look legit, but they're going against the Tom Brady that, looked old. Like the Patriots looked like they couldn't get anything going. So I really don't know what to think about this Titans D all too much. I mean, Lamar Jackson has proven he's been matchup proof just because of his rushing upside. I think he's only had less than 60 rushing yards in 2 games all season. If I'm not mistaken, I'll pull up the logs here, but he's been hitting the over on Vegas lines of rushing yards pretty much in every game. And with Mark Ingram being banged up, which we can talk about it when we get to running backs, but I think he'll pretty much put this team on his shoulders. The last time we saw Lamar Jackson in the playoffs against the Chargers looked like ass. So I think he's got a lot to prove as well to himself and to the nation that, Baltimore is legit. So he's up there at the top. You're going to pay a hefty price tag for him. We got Pat Mahomes right behind him, $900 cheaper, home matchup against Houston. Houston, we talked about it last week, Kevin and I, on the podcast, how bad they are. I think they're 7th worst DVOA against the pass. They allow the 2nd most fantasy points to the quarterback position. Pat Mahomes, I think, sets up great for tournaments. This game has the highest over-under on the slate. People are looking at his game logs, I feel like, at least from the traction that I've seen thus far, and just, not really, they're just underselling him, I feel like. And with so many people going to another KC guy in this matchup who's 6K at a different position, I think that ownership could come down on Patrick Mahomes. So I do like him for tournaments. Deshaun Watson in that same game, even cheaper, going down at 6,700. I mean, I don't want to talk about everybody, but here's a guy that pretty much just put the team on his back last week against Buffalo. Really remarkable what he was able to do. Salvaged his game without DeAndre Hopkins, 20 of 25, even though he got sacked 7 times. Only a touchdown passing, but he had the touchdown rushing, which really saved him there. Outside of that, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Ryan Tannehill are going to round it out for us. For me, and I'll toss it over to Kev to go next, but I really just like trying to get to Pat Mahomes with the stacks there in that high over-under. If I'm not going with him, I think I probably feel the most comfortable if I'm not playing Lamar Jackson in tournaments to go to Russell Wilson. I think that, and I said this last week with Seattle and Philly, but Carson Wentz getting injured, I think it didn't come to fruition. But I think that game shaped up for a really good sneaky shootout. I think that Green Bay and Seattle also shapes up pretty well for a sneaky shootout. I mean, Seattle has no the defense was just, I think people will look at Seattle's defense and look how well they did. And it's like, that was against McCown. Like, I don't give a fuck about that. They got to play against Aaron Rodgers now. And I think these two teams, they played each other before. These games have been freaking bananas. And, Russ, the way that the running back position shaped up for Seattle, I think Russ is going to be in a position to throw the ball a lot. I think with Aaron Jones being there and Aaron Rodgers, he could find himself in the position he's playing from behind. And I just like the narrow distribution of targets. Like, I'm not playing Jacob Hollister, but when you're talking about a guy like DK Metcalf in the 6K range and Tyler Lockett probably going under-owned. And Tyler Lockett, when he's been on, he's only had 2 games, I think, where he's actually had slate breaking upside, but like you had to have him those weeks because I think it was a 30 burger and a 40 burger. So if he hits, I think that'll be a very low owned stack that I feel very comfortable with. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. It's very, we're recording this on Thursday, so it's still early on, still got some places to go. But Kev, talk to me about quarterback position and what you're seeing, what you're liking.
Yeah, I mean, I guess piggyback off something you said, I think you really have to make a decision because you're going to take a stand here. I mean, if you play Patrick Mahomes or even Lamar Jackson, even more so, you're going to have to take a stand on this one because if you're wanting to pay up for the high-priced running backs, I mean, it's going to be tough to be able to fit in like a Patrick Mahomes with Tyreek and, like a Travis Kelce type stack. Like, I think if you're going to run it, I think it's going to have to be Pat Mahomes. I don't mind pairing him with Damian Williams because how much they use him in the backfield. Or going down to probably one of the better value plays on the slate and going like with McCole Hardman, who has, you're hoping for that 60-yard touchdown that he provides. Because, that's kind of the way they use it. He's not somebody who's going to see heavy targets or anything like that. Or even I guess a Sammy Watkins, but that dude has been trashed since week 1. But I mean, so if you're playing Patrick Mahomes, you're going to have to kind of stand on it, in my opinion, because right now with running backs, there's not a lot of like cheap running backs that I think you fall in love with that are great plays. Like I think most of them reside up top. So, I think even playing like a Lamar Jackson, if you were to play him, I think playing him naked would be one way that I would look to go. And then you could still play up at running back and pay down at wide receiver. I think that's an interesting spot to be in as well. But I mean, right now you look at the team totals right now, and the Chiefs have the highest at 30.25 implied point total. Then you have Lamar Jackson, who's second at 28. And then you have a lot of teams that are kind of in that 25 to the 20 to 25 range. With Ryan Tannehill and the Titans being only at 19, the only team I think is sub 20 on the slate. But I don't know. So right now for me, I think if I have to, it's going to be Pat Mahomes. I do like Kirk Cousins. Like I mentioned, I think that you compare him with the Thielen or Diggs. Diggs is actually priced down this week. I think he's 5,600, I think, which is way too cheap for him, in my opinion. I know last week was a bit of a struggle for him, but I think they can kind of get back on board with him. And right now I have to monitor what's happening with Adam Thielen. I believe they said it was a cut. They said at first they just said an ankle. Mm-hmm. Now I believe they said he was cut and he actually had to have stitches in his ankle, I believe is what I saw today on Twitter. So it sounds like he's going to be good to go. So as long as we have their full complement of weapons, and he's the cheapest quarterback, I believe, on this slate as well, or the second cheapest. But I mean, that price tag is hard to get away from and stacking him. The only thing I don't like about it is kind of like we talked about last week is playing these guys that are playing on that first slate is tough because they can kind of, if you're somebody like Maddie who only plays 1 or 2 lineups and you have heavy, and you're playing those guys, your weekend can be over with very quickly.
No, true enough, Kev. True enough. Derek, Maddie, our guests here, quarterback position. What have you guys been finding yourself leaning to? Where are you guys going?
Maddie, you want to kick it off? Oh, no, you're going to flip with me?
Yeah,
All right. Dude, I honestly think I have a hard time getting Lamar Jackson. And the fact of it is that who are you going to pair him with and feel really good about? I mean, I get like probably the most viable is Mark Andrews, but when we get to tight end, man, there's other options on this slate that I really like that I feel like you can gain some value as far as tight end. But Lamar Jackson, like, you're probably going to run him naked. And if that's the case, dude, I'm just going to go down and lock in Deshaun Watson and run him naked because he can get there. Like last week, he got there and he pulled nobody with him. None of his wide receivers went off, nothing like that. So if I'm going to run a quarterback naked and not stack him and go for a correlation, it's going to be Watson over Jackson. And like Kev is talking about, you're paying up for Lamar Jackson. There are other quarterbacks on this slate that have that 30, 35 point upside. So what are you really gaining by getting up to 8,400? You're killing yourself, because what wide receivers are you going to be able to pay up for? What running backs are you going to be able to pay up for? I mean, I would much rather, if I'm going to go with a naked quarterback, I'm going to go with Watson. And as far as the other quarterbacks that I like on this slate, I like Russ. I think that game can go over. It could shoot out. We've seen Russ, like when Seattle is pushed. I love Marshawn Lynch as much as the next person, and I think Travis Homer does have some juice, but even versus the Packers, that's a split backfield. If they can't run the ball real well, they're going to be forced to throw, especially if the Packers get up early on them. And we've seen Russ, when they're pushed, he has these huge games. Like Tampa, he broke the damn slate. He could do that here. And like Maddie was talking about, I can't remember if we were on air or not, but Green Bay is a fraud, dude. We're going to get to it. Their secondary is not nearly as good as people think they are. And so if people are still in the narrative that they think that the Green Bay defense is good, like actually good, then I think that Seattle is not going to carry half as much ownership as some people think. But I don't know, man. Like for me right now, it's either naked Watson, Russ, or I'm going to Mahomes, because the Texans are trash. Their secondary is trash. Like the Bills just shit the bed last week. Like KC can light up the Texans secondary, and you do that by you pick them apart underneath. And everybody's talking about, like, Tyreek Hill has added a facet to his game this year. He's not just this deep bomb threat. About half of his target share, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but almost about half of his target share is not deep bombs. It's underneath routes. He's become more a complete receiver. So KC could pick them apart all damn day long. And people want to talk about running backs and quarterbacks don't correlate well. Dude, I'm all about some Mahomes, Damian Williams, and Tyreek, and just move on and figure out the rest of your lineup. So that's where I'm at. Where you at, Maddie?
I mean, we might as well just move to running backs. You just said everything that I was going to say. No, I love the Mahomes, Williams, Tyreek stack. I don't think many people are going to go there, and you're essentially getting every single point that the Chiefs score, pairing both Mahomes and Williams together. We've seen Williams. We can talk about it when we get to running backs, but yeah, like you said, Mahomes is not going to have any issue tearing apart that Houston defense. And then I think figuring out that Green Bay Seattle game is very important to this slate, because that is the only game I think outside of Kansas City game that can go nuclear. I think the San Francisco Minnesota game can be slow. Both teams are going to want to run the football if they can. And if Thielen's banged up, that's a concern for Minnesota as a whole, moving the football down the field. And you've got San Francisco playing Minnesota, where Minnesota's given up 0 touchdowns to the tight end position. So Kittle, the biggest part of that passing offense, is all of a sudden in a bad matchup. And they've faced some good tight ends. So I think that game, while it may have some allure on the surface, I think that game could end up being one of the lower scoring defensive-minded games on the slate. And then you've got Tennessee and Baltimore, which supposedly it's going to be some nasty weather there. It's late, cold, heavy rain, 20-mile-an-hour winds. And if that's the case,
are they talking about bad weather in Green Bay too?
Supposedly,
yes,
that's pregame.
I think, right?
That's pregame, though, I think.
I mean, honestly, I'm on hashtag team just fade the weather. So, but yeah, I get it. I
don't think the Green Bay game is an issue because the wind, there's no wind. I looked right before we hopped on, and I saw 0 to 1 mile an hour in Green Bay. But the wind in Baltimore is, I think it's north of 20. So that's definitely where I start to make adjustments on the passing game. And you've got two teams there that also want to run the football. So, yeah, I can't pay for Lamar. It's Mahomes, Watson, and you got to figure out Russ or Rodgers, I think, because that game, I think, is the best chance to go nuclear outside of Houston, Kansas City.
So I feel like that with, at least on the Houston side of things, that if you're going to run things back, I think one thing to look at is the fact that the Chiefs lost Juan Thornhill in the Week 17 matchup, which is a huge blow to that defense because he's kind of like that center fielder where they've used the Honey Badger as sort of like a hybrid. They just kind of move him all over the field. They bring him up on the line, have him rush. They have him play all over the place. Where now they're going to be asking either Kendall Fuller, who is a slot corner who really struggles at that point and doesn't have the speed that Juan Thornhill does or the ball skills, or it's going to be Armani Watts, who is a player who, when he came out drafted in the 5th round last year, a lot of people talked about his ball skills, but he is very raw. He played sparingly last year, then went on IR. Then this year, he's only played like 27 snaps. So I think if I was going to run it back or play Deshaun Watson, like I want a ton of Will Fuller. We know it. You can't. I'm not taking really anything from what happened week 6 when the Texans and the Chiefs played. I know people are going to talk about how the Texans are able to run the ball over them and they won that game, but this is a completely different game. That Pat Mahomes was banged up. Tyreek Hill only played 50% of the snaps in that game. You had Eric Fisher, their starting left tackle. Chris Jones was out. I mean, it's a completely different game. But the point I guess I'm getting at is with the loss of Juan Thornhill, I think that the Chiefs have been very good at really limiting the deep ball this year and stopping that. And I think that with the loss of Juan Thornhill, that could kind of open up the deep ball for Houston as long as Will Fuller plays. Now, I think he's going to play. He sounded like he was close last week and they held him out. But Will Fuller plays, although there is the chance of that re-injury. But, man, I think Will Fuller's like 5K. Like, it's going to be hard not to be 60, 70% on Will Fuller, because I think that's going to be a big problem for Kansas City with the loss of Thornhill. And I think that's going to be something that they're going to have to figure out. And like I said, what their best options is Kendall Fuller and Amari Watts, and then sorry-ass Dan Sorensen, who shouldn't be playing. But so right now, I think that is an area that I would look to exploit if I was the Texans.
Well, to your point, Kev, I looked at snaps and stuff like that. It's Fuller that I think they're going to put in that role, because his snaps, he's been, their primary slot corner, like you're talking about. I looked at the last game he played, and his snaps were all over the place. They had him like a linebacker, free safety, everywhere, dude. So I think the role you're speaking of, I think it's going to be Fuller that fills it.
Yeah, we'll see the way it works, because I mean, I think we could end up seeing some sort of a rotation, but it's still a downgrade from what Juan Thornhill was. Like Juan Thornhill quietly, especially over the last 6 to 8 weeks, had really started to turn it on. So I don't know.
Fuller's trash too. So not Will Fuller, but Kendall Fuller.
Yeah, he's not nearly as good as everybody thought he was going to be when the Chiefs traded for him.
That's a boost to Mahomes too if the defense takes a hit.
Yep.
Well, I don't know. I mean, because I still think that you see this team come out and with their hair on fire and chip on their shoulder because of what happened. So,
well, fun stat too. Andy Reid is. Go ahead.
Well, it's just what scares me about the Texans side is I don't know. Like, this feels like a game similar to what we saw with the Colts last year, where the Chiefs just fucking lay the hammer on them so at home. Kind of everything kind of lines up for that. And this defense that is playing much better again, though, like I talked about that loss, but like, I don't know, like playing Watson is super risky because I could see a scenario where he gets you 12.
Yeah, but playing from behind, I think he's going to be running around a ton.
Dude, yeah, I think, and that, to me, if that's how you kind of think the game goes, to me, that reinforces playing Watson naked for me. Yeah. Because Watson's going to get there. I think he's had, I saw a stat on Twitter, and I know he finds a damn way to keep it within a touchdown every single freaking game. Like, it's going back to college. Like, this dude he goes God mode. Like, last time they played, he had 2 rushing touchdowns. He compensates. And even if you don't want to play Fuller, which I don't know if I'm going to even look at Fuller this week. That guy scares the shit out of me. Like I feel like he's got the upside, and yeah, I get that. Like, he dropped 3 touchdowns and whatever. Like, last time that he played, this dude is like one bad turn just away from gimping and blowing all your lineups. I'm really a big fan of going just Watson naked this week and him getting there, because he could definitely do it and not take anybody with him, like even Hopkins. So
interesting. I want to keep it moving here, running back, and we can get back onto these positions, because I do think it does. It just drives the conversation to keep talking about these games and how things can go and play out. And which Kevin and I talked about last week. Like, you get these game scenarios right, and you could be, feeling pretty good about yourself. We saw the Millie lineup. The Millie lineup had a Deshaun Watson, Kenny Stills, and Dave Fells in it. I couldn't believe it. I was like, is this a joke? But if some of these other guys hit, I think it's important to talk about. I do think I would feel more comfortable playing Watson with somebody in this game with KC, just because of the high over under that it has at 51. I just feel like to get there, for him to get there, he has to bring somebody along. I don't think he can fall into it with a Buffalo, the way the Buffalo had it. There's a lot of matchups to exploit. I do get you, Derek, that it is tough to play Fuller at that price, even at that price tag, because of the injury. And I played him that week when he left with the hamstring injury. It didn't feel great. So he's definitely prone to go back and do it again. Let's move it on. I will say one last thing, just to touch on real quick, for Lamar Jackson. He is 8-4. It's been one of we saw him week 16, he was 8,000. That was the highest. So most of these 35, 34, 33-point matchups we were getting from him, he was at the 7K range. So definitely a higher price bump. But in those games, we saw him get pulled early. Do we think that there's a chance if Baltimore, let's just say it's 35-7 in the third quarter, is Lamar coming out of the game, which then would hurt him, or is he still playing? Because I feel like if we think that he's playing the whole game, regardless of like maybe 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter or what have you, that will lead to him getting closer to a 40 threshold in some of these other games where he scored 33, 34, 35, but got pulled like halfway through the third or even at the beginning of the fourth because they were blowing people out of the water.
Well, it goes back to, if they're blowing people out, he's the only guy that's scoring the touchdowns. So
yeah,
if they've got 35 points, he's got 5 touchdowns, basically, is how I look at it, especially if Ingram's banged up.
I think it comes down to, what do you think the game script looks like? Does Tennessee try to like slow it all the way the hell down and just run the ball and try to keep him off the field as well? Like, does he get the volume to kind of get there? I mean, he doesn't need much volume to get there. So I honestly think this game, like, he can get there in this game and he'll play the entire game, but man,
it's just the opportunity cost for me at quarterback is not tough, big enough.
Yeah.
To warrant me paying $8.4K. Because, like, if Mahomes has a bad game, what does he score? 21 points? And that's, what, 12, 13 points off of Lamar's really good floor that he has? Mid-30s? And then, if Mahomes has a good game, he can score 35, and you're saving $900 in salary.
Or Watson, and
even Watson, if Watson runs in 2 touchdowns again, I mean, it's hard to bank on a quarterback running in 2 touchdowns. But Watson is a mobile quarterback, and that's part of his game. I mean, he's got that 50 rush yards and a touchdown rushing upside. So there's 11 points before you even start counting passing stats in a game that we're projecting Houston to play from behind. And then you look at Russ. The Seattle doesn't have a running back. Like, yeah, Marshawn Lynch and Homer, I mean, they're serviceable, but Seattle's not going to go give those guys 40 carries.
Right.
I mean, the fact that Homer just had more carries than Marshawn last week is telling against the Philly defense that you can't really run on. So Homer was in the game more for pass personnel, but the fact that Homer saw double-digit carries, 11 carries for 12 yards or something like that, and Marshawn Lynch had 6 carries. Yeah, they're going to lean on Russ to win them playoff games, and I just could see that Seattle game getting into a shootout. And you've got Russ, who, if they are losing, Russ, we've seen his mobility as well. So it's not like you're paying down for quarterbacks that don't have rushing upside, like a Kirk Cousins or something, because you would need Cousins to absolutely smash to really warrant playing him. You don't necessarily need those other QBs that we just talked about to smash through the air because they all have the rushing upside. So
to Maddie's point too, the other thing I want to, because I don't want to forget this point, because running backs, I don't give a crap about Seattle running backs, but with Russ, I think it does need to be mentioned too that he might be missing like half of his damn offensive line this week too. Like, both of their tackles have logged like DMPs. Their guard has logged a DMP. Russ might be running for his life. And Green Bay's like pass rush is not like amazingly like crazy stout, but he's got half of a guy. Yeah, well, that's fair. But my point is that like he could be running around for his life, and that could increase like all these scrambles and broken plays for Russ, which we've seen him just go nuclear based off of that. So.
Exactly. So those are some of the games we've seen Russ perform his best, is when it's just backyard football.
Yep.
Old schoolyard, run around, just do what you got to do, Russ. Go win us a game.
Yeah.
When they get in hurry up mode and he starts calling plays instead of the offensive coordinator. And Russ's legs, I think he could really – I think his ceiling is as high as anybody's here.
45 yards last week as well, too, on 9 rushes. So, because I think they did have a guy banged up last week on the line, if I'm not recalling. Philly was trying to bring the heat on him. So, definitely has some upside there. Kev, go ahead with your point, and we'll move it on to running back.
No, I was just gonna say, it's wild that there hasn't been, I don't think, one mention of Aaron Rodgers on this so far, and he's the 5th highest priced quarterback on this slate in a game that you guys think that could be a shootout. I don't know. This feels like one of those games with him though that it's what was it that I don't remember what the week it was where he just went off and nobody
Oakland.
was
Raiders.
Oakland.
Yeah. He tore the hell out of them.
It feels like that. Nobody's talking about Aaron Rodgers. They're at home. I don't know. Seattle secondary can be had. They're definitely not as scary as as the years past. And yes, they don't necessarily have the weapons that they usually do, but I mean they still have Devontae Adams. You can use the running backs out of the backfield, and I think Allen Lazard is a decent option as well as a number 2. But Jimmy Graham as well. But I don't know. I just feel like we could be looking back on next week and be like, damn, why didn't we play Aaron Rodgers? But I don't know. I just thought it was interesting that he was never even mentioned.
No, I definitely get that, especially that. Like I mentioned, that game is definitely the one game I could see going nuclear, and you would definitely want some Aaron Rodgers if that turns into a shootout. I guess my one concern for Rodgers there is you can run on Seattle, and we've seen Green Bay just go ahead and give Jamal and Aaron Jones 25, 30 carries and let Rodgers throw for 30 attempts. So at that point, he just has to be efficient.
The other thing I could say, too, is you could easily just play Aaron Jones and Adams, and you got your entire exposure to the entire Green Bay offense, as concentrated it is. So you don't have to necessarily play Rodgers to get all of his upside.
Yeah, because we've seen when Rodgers does spike, a lot of it has been passes to the running back position. Williams and Aaron Jones get involved. And even that game against Detroit, I watched that whole game because I was heavily invested in Aaron Rodgers that weekend. But that game, one, it told me the Packers are not as good as everybody thinks they are, because that was a must-win game, and you're playing the Detroit freaking Lions, and you're struggling to beat them in a game that you need to win to secure a first-round bye. But second, Rodgers he was missing throws by less than a foot, fingertip balls are hitting off fingertips, but it's literally the running back position. And then it's Devontae Adams is who he throws to. And Lazard here and there. And then
those are the only people he can trust.
Exactly. Jimmy Graham here and there. And just
Graham's dust.
Give me Jones and Adams, and I got my entire exposure to the Green Bay offense.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, Maddie. That's what I was going to say. I do and we'll talk about this at receiver, but I do kind of like Lazard. So if I'm playing another guy, and I've thought about considering Jimmy Graham just because it's Seattle, but if I'm considering playing somebody else besides those two, I'm going to stack them with Rodgers. I can't play those guys, I don't think, without a Rodgers stack, if that makes any sense. I could play Adams, I could play Jones and feel confident not having that exposure and running it back with the Seattle side. But if you're playing Rodgers, you gotta have one of Jones and or Devontae Adams and probably somebody else. That's just my thoughts on it. But let's move to running back, because when we're talking about Lamar Jackson, I think that makes sense to kind of talk about another guy who's on the other side, in Derrick Henry, who has basically just, don't be a prisoner to game logs, but my goodness, what he's been doing the past however many weeks it's been, Jesus Christ, since week 10 against Kansas City, 188, 159, 149, 103, 86, 211, 182. I mean, those are just insane, godly numbers. This guy is legit matchup proof. And so even going against Baltimore, as you were kind of alluding to, Derek, Tennessee, I don't feel like they're going to abandon their philosophy at all, which is just if we are going to slow it down, we are just going to feed this dude regardless. And how many times did we see, even when the Titans were down, it's we have one game plan. and that's get this motherfucker the ball because he's just so good. And they will not try and abandon this unless it gets out of hand. And so if you don't think this is a Baltimore blowout, you have to at least consider Derrick Henry and just see what you can do with your lineups, because this guy's been so phenomenal and his logs have been so good. I don't know like what's going to happen. And you're thinking about ownership, right? Like it's hard to get Lamar and Derrick and Damian Williams and then a wide receiver that you feel really comfortable about. So people are going to be making some sacrifices. And it might start with Derrick Henry. It might be people might want to fade him. People are buying into the Baltimore hype. They're at home. And so I do think that he makes some sense to – it makes me scared to full fade him. So I am trying to build lineups with him because he's been so good. Dalvin Cook, I love this guy. I think he's legit as well too. He just doesn't have the same – upside, I don't feel like, as Derrick Henry, and somebody can correct me on that if not, but just the way that they're using Madison, I think they love him. I think they love spelling Cook. I think they know that this guy has been dealing with multiple injuries since he's been on the team, and I don't think they want to, just pound him into the ground with 30 carries every time. But this is a playoff game, and this, it is against San Francisco, so that could be wrong. Their wide receivers are banged up. Both Diggs is dealing with an illness, and Thielen's got something going on. So he might just have to get the ball. He's 8K, though. I can't find myself getting to him. The San Francisco D's been pretty much legit against the run all year. They've had some slip-ups here and there, but $200, I'm going to play Henry over Cook. That's just my philosophy. The other two guys who basically have been talked about all week, Aaron Jones and Damian Williams. I mean, Damian Williams, his price at 6K is just I literally might be 100% on him. I just don't know how you get away from that price tag. It makes so much sense. Devin Singletary was in the same matchup last week. Everybody was talking about playing him at right around the same price. He gets more pass catching work than Devin Singletary does. He's played more snaps than Devin Singletary has, and he's just utilized as a Swiss Army knife. I don't want to liken him to James White, but he kind of is like the KC James White. He's going to be out there doing everything. The matchup is great, and he's balled out in the playoffs before. We saw this last postseason. He got hot. He got on a hot streak to end the season last year. So he finds himself in that same similar thing again. Just at that price, I love him. Aaron Jones, he's a little bit pricier, coming in at 7,400. So I think right now I'm leaning towards Devontae Adams, but I do want to get some exposure to Aaron Jones just because we were talking at one point that Aaron Jones had some of the best games at the running back position outside of Christian McCaffrey with his 50-point outburst and his 40-point outburst. So we've definitely seen what his upside could be, which definitely makes me like him a lot. But, I think, if I can find a way to get some of that $800 money to get up to Derrick Henry, I think that's where I would lean to go, is Derrick Henry and Damian Williams on my lines. I do, and Maddie, I'll let you start this time. I do like Raheem Mostert as well at 5,800, and it basically just comes down to what San Francisco's identity is in rushing the ball, especially when they get in the red zone. And Tevin Coleman and Matt Breida's snaps have significantly declined in the past couple of games. So if he's going to get a lion's share of the work at 5,800, I think you can still feel comfortable about that. And there's not really anything else that I like. I mean, if you want to, if you're playing 150 lineups, you have some Duke Johnson exposure, sure. If you have some Gus Edwards exposure, sure. Mark Ingram, I know people are going to play him. I'm not, but okay, sure. But those are really the three guys for me that stick out, and the fourth being Moser. Maddie, where are you at running back position this week?
Yeah, so I just kind of wanted to jump in on your Dalvin Cook, your concern with Madison. Red zone carries this year, Cook has 46 and Madison has 27. So there is a split there, especially once they get in close. I think they feel that Madison is the bigger back and Cook is more elusive and better utilized between the 20s. Not saying Cook can't do the goal line work, but They do like Madison down there in that goal line role. So that's definitely a concern for somebody you're paying 8-2 for against one of the better defenses in the NFL. I mean, we've seen guys have good rushing games against San Francisco, and Dalvin Cook is involved in the pass game. But if I'm going all the way up to 8-2, man, I think you're playing Derrick Henry at that point. I don't know, like I'm right now. I'm at the point where I don't love Henry enough that I'm starting builds with him. But if I come across enough value and I have 8,200 or I have like 7,900 and can find $300 to play with, I'll find a way to make Derrick Henry work. Because we've seen Baltimore give up these big games to these more explosive backs. I mean, Nick Chubb, he went for almost 200 yards that one game against them. They ranked 30th in open field yards this year, which is carries that go for 10 yards or more. So they're near bottom of the league there. Their good play has come on their defensive line. So it's with them ranking so high on the defensive line, they're like 6th in adjusted line yards, I believe. And then 30th in open field yards. That tells me they're being pretty aggressive, trying to stop the run, and they give up. They lose their discipline in the gaps, and guys can get through for big gains. So I think Derrick Henry is a very good tournament play, and he's going to get they get inside the 5. It's going to Derrick Henry. So I think that he's a good tournament play, but I don't think he's this lock that we've seen over the last few weeks, because his rushing matchups have been like some of the best rushing matchups on paper. That closing stretch of 6 games or whatever it was, 8 or 10 games to close the year. There wasn't a single tough rushing matchup in there. So it'll be interesting to see what he does in Baltimore. Outside of that, we talked about Aaron Jones, the usage of running backs in the pass game in Green Bay. Jamal Williams, he's kind of seen – Derek kind of pointed this out earlier today. He's kind of seen his role diminish over the last few weeks. You look at his carries and targets before you get to week 13, and it's double digits most weeks. And then you get to week 14 and you start to see it taper off pretty heavily. So it's almost like they did start to utilize Aaron Jones more even before Jamal Williams went down with an injury. So I do think I prefer Jones over Henry at the moment and saving $800 in salary. Because also a note there is Seattle, they only rank like 65th percentile in targets to the running back position, but they rank bottom 12th percentile in receiving yards allowed to running backs. So that tells me despite no volume going to the running back position against them, they're giving up chunks and chunks and chunks of plays. Because they're near bottom of the league in terms of receiving yards allowed to running backs. So you get a guy like Aaron Jones who gets a spike in pass game volume potentially, and you've got a tournament-winning play there. Love the Damian Williams call. He's a lock for me. So that one's pretty straightforward. And the other guy I'm on is Carlos Hyde. We've picked on KC all year with running backs, and it's still a good matchup for them. And I wonder if we get the same treatment that New England gave Derrick Henry last week, where they just kind of said, "Hey, we're going to sit back, we're going to let you run, and we're not going to let your quarterback beat us. We'll slow the game down." I'm not necessarily sure Kansas City wants to slow the game down because they can beat anybody in a shootout. But if I'm Kansas City, I'm not letting Deshaun Watson beat me. I'll let Carlos Hyde beat me. I'm not letting Deshaun Watson beat me. So in a good matchup, Carlos Hyde already smashed him earlier this year. And Kansas City, that game he smashed, Kansas City was up 17-3 after the first quarter. So he still got 26 carries in a game that they were trailing by 14 points in the first quarter. So that tells me he's not as game script dependent as we think he is. And even just last week, down 13 to Buffalo at the half, Carlos Hyde is still getting second half carries. And it's not all Duke Johnson out there. So I'm not as worried about the timeshare or lack of favorable game script for Hyde. It's a really good matchup for him, and I could definitely see him going for 100 yards and a touchdown or two.
Derek, go ahead.
I mean, a lot of what Maddie said. I'm not really on Dalvin. I think watching every single snap of that game last week, Dalvin's healthy-ish, but if you look at how he's finishing his runs, he was either going down, running out of bounds and stuff like that. There wasn't this, like, he dropping his shoulder and getting extra yards. They just had, I mean, Minnesota just was manhandling them. Like, he had good lanes to run through. I don't know if that's going to be the same for San Francisco. Yes, they could be run on, but the thing is, if it's tough yards, I don't know if Cook is going to be used as heavily or if they're having that much success because I don't think his shoulder's 100%, and we could see more Madison here than anybody's thinking right now, only in the sense of, like, Maddie's talking about the red zone roll. If they get in close and my crazy game theories and what I've seen out of last week is right, could we see Madison get all the goal line work here and you're paying that much for Dalvin? I mean, yeah, if I'm going to pay that much, it's either Jones or Henry for me. Much less, like, if we're talking about the Vikings getting smashed in the mouth, if that is the outcome, like, yes, they could put up a good game and there are pieces of this game that I like as one-offs. But if that's the case, we're talking about Dalvin Cook getting there possibly on pass game usage. San Francisco still is really freaking good against running backs in the pass game. They're number one in DVOA versus them. So there's not even a slouch there. So if you're looking at Dalvin not getting there on the ground, I don't know if he's even going to get there in the air. So I'm having a hard time even like finding some edge to talk myself into Dalvin Cook this week. Like Maddie's talking about Henry. Yeah, like Baltimore gives a big place to good running backs that can break off long runs. That's Henry in a nutshell. Jones, yeah, like I like him this week for all the reasons that Maddie stated. I will not build a lineup this week. Straight up, will not build a lineup this week without Damian Williams. It's not going to freaking happen. I don't give a shit. I'm 100% on him. Like, dude, like, if LaShawn McCoy is out, which dude, they've healthy scratched him at 3 different games this year. Like, Damian Williams is the guy. I don't know, like, I don't think that they've saved LaShawn McCoy for this playoff run. Like, I don't think that they need him. Like, even if he plays, fine. Give me still Damian Williams at 100%, and hopefully that drops his ownership just a tad. Because if anybody's worried about LaShawn McCoy, give me those rumors. I'll take that all day. But I like Maddie's call on Hyde. The Texans, Bob is going to do what he's going to do. And Bob, it does not matter if they're getting smashed in the mouth, he is going to run the ball. Like, on the year, they're 24th in passing percentage when they're down and they're trailing by 9 points or more. He does not give 2 shits. And as much as Twitter wants Duke Johnson to be a freaking thing, he's not really a thing. Like, it's just not the case. Like, Carlos Hyde is probably going to get 20 touches in this game. Now, whether he gets 80 yards or 100 yards, dude, if Watson didn't run in, this matchup on the ground is so good for the Texans. Like, somebody's getting 2 tutties here. Like, it's either going to be Watson or Hyde. And whether you want to talk yourself into it, I'm not going to play Hyde and Watson in the same lineup. But if I'm running Watson and I'm a 3-max player, so if I'm running Watson in one of my lineups, I'm going to have Hyde in another one because I do think that somebody's getting 2 touchdowns on the ground in this matchup. It's just a question on who you tell yourself it's going to be. So if I want to hedge, I'm going to have exposure to both of them. But that's kind of where I'm at on running backs. It's a really narrow pool for me. And I don't even know if I get up to Derrick Henry this week with all the wide receivers that I want to pay up for, quarterbacks, and really, honestly, how my stacks are going to go. I can see myself full fading that Tennessee and Baltimore game. And does it make me feel great inside? No, I mean, my butthole's probably going to be puckered all weekend. But I still, like, with pricing and stuff and correlations and my stacks, that's kind of where I'm leaning, at least early in the week right now.
Kev, lock it up for us.
Ooh, I have to wake up after that, man. Jesus. Like, all right.
Oh, my goodness.
First of all, okay. Let me tell you.
Oh, here comes the Carlos Hyde hate. Who's ready?
Here we go.
Oh, boy.
Let me tell you why Kansas City's going to stop the run.
Duke Johnson, baby.
It's not. It's
AC Insider.
Fucking Henry. is the biggest fucking trap on this entire slate. You go look at every fucking game or when they're ahead. Look at the games whenever they trail. He scored 8 against Houston because they were trailing the entire game. He's the most game script dependent running back on the slate. The reason everybody didn't play him last week was because they thought there was no way they were going to lose to New England. And now here they're playing Baltimore, 9-point underdog, and people are going to talk themselves into Derrick Henry. Like, Derrick Henry is the absolute fade. If they get down by 2 scores, Derrick Henry's done. Like, you will not see Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry's not going to have all this opportunity. The only way Derrick Henry makes sense is if you think Baltimore or Tennessee is going to be able to get out to a lead and keep this game close. Because if they don't, Derrick Henry's done. Dalvin Cook is not game script dependent. Dalvin Cook will still be utilized as a pass catcher. He is a 3-down back, and that's why he makes so much more sense at 8K. Is it a great matchup for him? Can things go right? Yes. And at 8K, would I necessarily want to play him? No, probably not. I'd rather play other wide receivers. And I like you guys mentioned, I love Aaron Jones more. I love Damian Williams more. But if I had to make a decision and I had the money between Dalvin Cook and Derrick Henry, it is 100% Dalvin Cook all day and twice on Sundays. Derrick Henry, like I said, if you think, where everything points to the direction that they're going to get their asses kicked, then you do not play Derrick Henry because Derrick Henry is not going to be in the game. You will see 10 carries for Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is not utilized in the passing game. And so with that being said, unless you're projecting this game to be close or you project this game for Tennessee to have a lead, then that's the only way you can play Derrick Henry, in my opinion. So it is 100% Dalvin Cook over Derrick Henry. He has the highest ceiling on this entire slate for running backs, arguably next to Aaron Jones, who has shown that big-time ceiling. But Dalvin Cook is 100% in play at 8K. And so, like I said, I would prefer to pay down the $600 in savings that I'm going to need for Aaron Jones or play a Damian Williams, or I'm perfectly fine playing Mark Ingram at $6,700 at that price. I'm perfectly fine with doing that with him because he can easily find himself getting himself 2 rushing touchdowns. He's also utilized a little bit in the passing game. And so at $6,700, which is substantially cheaper. So yes, I would be much more inclined to play a Mark Ingram. But for me, it's Aaron Jones. It's a little bit of marketing, but it's mainly Aaron Jones, Dalvin Cook, Damian Williams, and I'll probably play a little bit of Travis Homer, and that's about it. I am not messing with Carl. I heard we've been targeting backs against the Chiefs all year. I hope you haven't been targeting them all year. Earlier in the year, sure, it was a good strategy, but the last 6 to 8 games hasn't necessarily been the greatest outcomes. Their defense, like I said, have become one of the best in the league over the last 6 to 7 weeks. And so once they added Pennell, once they've added all these pieces they have, I don't want any part of Carlos Hyde. Carlos Hyde has more opportunity to get you 6 or 8 than anything else. Now, do I understand the play at 5K? Sure. It makes some sense. And there's not a big difference between him and Duke Johnson. Would I rather play Carlos Hyde? I guess. But I don't want to play any of these running backs from this game outside of Damian Williams. So I think it's pretty narrow. I think it's Aaron Jones and Damian Williams. And then if you want to throw in a little bit of Travis Homer or something like that, go for it. But I don't know. I don't know. I just thought that Derrick Henry
oh my God. You got to love him.
Kansas City, week 12, ranked 31st in adjusted line yards, 32nd in second level yards, 24th in open field yards. Kansas City, week 17, 29th in adjusted line yards, 31st second level yards, 25th in open field yards. So, across that 5 week span, they've jumped 2 spots in adjusted line yards, 1 spot in second level yards, and they've fallen back 1 spot in open field yards. They've been the same exact run defense. Now, granted, they might not have given up the same production, in terms of final box scores, but in terms of the advanced metrics, they're the same exact run defense that they've been all year. And I'm going to target
it. Kevin, with Derrick Henry, I mean, come on, dude. They commit to him, and you think about the game of Oakland, right? So they beat Oakland. The final box score doesn't really paint the picture. Oakland came out to start that game, and Derek Carr was throwing a long bomb touchdown, and it was tied going into halftime, and really not anything going. I've seen Derrick Henry rip off 75-yard runs in the fourth quarter, third quarter, and they don't get blown out really. So like if you do paint a picture where the Ravens are blowing them out, then sure. But like if it's the way that Tennessee has usually been playing football, if we've seen anything on the regular season that can come to fruition in this game, they're probably going to be in it. And if they're down by anything but 3 scores or more, I just don't see them like not getting him the ball. Dion Lewis has been popped up on the injury report. Like AJ Brown is going to have not tougher than last week, but a tough matchup once again. Like I'm not going to chase Corey Davis once again. I did that last week. I'm done with him. So like who else is getting the ball, Kev? Like they're going to give him so many touches, and like Kirk Cousins, Mike Zimmer does like to run the ball, and I do like Cook has some merit, but if it's down to 200 and I'm going to play one other guy, like I'm not going to play a guy who has the chance to get spelled. Like I'm not going to play the guy who they're running trick plays and letting Stephon Diggs run on end arounds to get him the ball because he's throwing his helmet on the sideline. Like I'm going to get the ball who's consistently, I'm going to play a guy who's consistently getting the ball 25 times and they commit their offense to him. And we've seen that.
That's why you're a fish.
Yeah, that's why I'm a fish. Check the winnings. Check the winning.
I'm just saying. You shouldn't play running backs who don't get targeted.
To say it's a trap is just like not good. This is a 4 games play.
People are going to.
It doesn't matter. He doesn't need to get targets, Kev. Like he's getting the usage on the ground. So play a guy play a Travis Homer and like see what that gets you, because I know that when they're in the red zone, like this dude is getting the ball. There's no chances around that. Like they're going to get this ball established with Derrick Henry. He's their best chance to win if this game is 3 scores or less. I guarantee you. So, I mean, I'm just saying, look, I mean, just what we've been seeing from him, there is merit to playing this dude. And when I'm looking on the slate and looking at the landscape, like, yeah, I could play an Aaron Jones at $800 less. But if he doesn't get there, if Aaron Rodgers is hitting Devontae Adams on all of the, 12 targets that he's probably going to see and falls into 30 and Aaron Rodgers has 30 and Aaron Jones just isn't getting there because he's fumbled the ball twice again and then getting benched for Jamal Williams. Like, I mean, we talk about scenarios all the time, but I think Derrick Henry presents himself as one of the safest scenarios to get you to a score that is worth the price tag. We're not talking about 10K Christian McCaffrey. It's 8-2. And if you're not playing Lamar Jackson, then I think Derrick Henry makes some sense on the other side. Because you can do it.
My whole thing with Henry is just that, like, we saw the Titans just basically say, we're going to run the damn ball and run the damn ball and run the damn ball. Because nobody wanted to play Henry. And I faded him too. Full faded him last week. Because
why did you fade him?
Because it was versus the Patriots. And I was like, they're going to stop the run. Okay? And their run defense has arguably been just as good, but open field yards, they were not giving up. Damn it. The same thing like him. The Patriots run defense was not giving up the open field yards like the Ravens are. We've seen running backs, Mostert smash them in the mouth. We've seen Chubb smash them in the mouth. Running backs that can break off long runs can beat them. And one of the craziest things that happened last week is the Titans running a 2-minute drill by literally running down the damn field. Like, they are committed to beating that dude. I don't see unless Derrick Henry blows out, like he loses a leg, like I don't see a way that Henry, even if they get like it handed to them, how does Derrick Henry not get 15 to 20 touches? Like, somebody explain that to me, because I don't see a scenario where this dude does not get 20 touches. Like, that does not happen. Like, somebody explain it to me, because I don't get it. Like, he's going to get his 20.
It's happened multiple times this year, though. He hasn't got to 20.
In the last few weeks, though. When has that happened?
In the last few weeks, now.
No, like,
look at the weeks that you're referring to.
But didn't you just say like earlier? But didn't you just say
bad last week?
You just said don't play Carlos Hyde because you're buying into earlier on the week, and they fixed the shit. Okay, so Tennessee fixed the shit with Derrick Henry. We weren't getting them the ball. Let's get them the ball. Oh my God, look what's happening now. We find ourselves playing in a playoff game when nobody believed that we could be here.
Right. But
I don't like Henry. I'm just saying there is a way he can get there.
And you look at the last 4 or 5, whatever you want to, are all games that they were substantially favored, and they'll say that they won, and they were very close.
They were very good rushing matchups. They were very good
last week. How much was New England favored last week?
It was like
I don't know.
3. Was it 3?
Ooh, it was that close? Jesus.
Yeah, it was close.
I didn't bet the lines. I don't remember.
No, so
it opened larger than that. It opened larger.
Actually, it might have been 5.5.
I do see a way that he can get there. I might have no Henry this week. I'm not saying that is not definitely in play. So I do think that depending on ownerships, he could be an elite tournament play.
Let's say he gets you 80 yards and a touchdown. Is that worth it at 8,200? Is that worth it at 8,200? 80 yards.
How many yards?
80 yards and a touchdown, no receptions, or we'll say 1 reception because that's about as most he's ever going to get you. Is that worth it at 8,200?
It's not, but that's a scenario that you're talking about. So like the dude could go out there and get 80 yards and 2 touchdowns. He could go out there and get 150 and 1 touchdown. I mean, the reason you're playing him is for his upside, Kev. Like you're not playing him for a scenario where he gets 80 yards and a touchdown. If he gets that, then okay, you don't want him. But to say you're not going to have him is ridiculous.
At $8,200, who's not involved in the passing game, who I feel like is a heavy underdog in this game. And so if they're not going to be utilized as a pass catcher, and I feel like that they're going to be down by multiple scores, yes, they may still try to feed him for a time. Who knows? But there's been multiple games. When you go back to earlier in the year when they were struggling as a team and they were down, he routinely didn't see 20 touches. You start seeing that number start to rise as Tannehill came in the game, as they started winning and they started going on this run. And so I feel like that people are going to be chasing last week's box score, what we saw from him and recently, and I don't think it's going to be that close. I think Baltimore can kick their heads in.
Kevin, we've been saying that for 7 weeks. We've been saying that for 7 weeks, chasing the box score.
Well, so
putting up numbers.
I think I'm between the two sides here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm between
the two sides here because I think I want maybe. If I'm playing 3 teams, I maybe want 1 Derrick Henry team max. Yeah. Like I don't want anything more than that. And if I'm, let's say, a 20 max player, I definitely would be underweight on the field, whatever the field is going to come in at. But just to kind of to back up Kevin a little bit, something I never do. If you look at week 9 is when he started going on his tear. He played Carolina, one of the worst run defenses in the NFL. Kansas City, one of the worst run defenses in the NFL. Jacksonville, one of the worst run defenses in the NFL. Indy, not a good run defense. Oakland, they've been better, but they had their spots where they weren't very good. Houston, not a good run defense. Houston, again, not a good run defense. And then I think New England, what I think New England said last week was our offense isn't good enough to try to shoot out with anybody. So let's let Tennessee take the air out of the ball and just run the clock down. And we'll just score 1 more point than Tennessee scores. I mean, he ran for what, 180?
Yep.
And they scored 2 touchdowns as a team?
Yep.
Like I think New England's game plan was fine. Let Derrick Henry run wild. We don't want to get in a shootout with you. And that's I think
multiple times, Maddie. I mean, they let Gore go for 100. We've talked about this in previous weeks. That I definitely see there's credence there.
Yeah. So I think that if Henry is going to be popular here, this is definitely the worst matchup he's had since week 9, other than the New England game last week. But I think New England's game plan was to kind of let Henry do his thing and to just kind of say, well, let's just make this a low-scoring game, and that's how we're going to beat you. And so I think you could see Henry come in pretty popular, but I'm not sure because it is Baltimore and he is 8-2.
I just don't know if he's going to be popular enough. Is what I'm saying. Yeah. And in single entry tournaments, I like Henry because I'm not playing Lamar, I don't think. So I'm going to play one of these guys in that game. I feel like at this point in my builds. And the other thing about it is Baltimore's secondary also got a hell of a lot better to end this season. And so, like, even in games like Derek brought up the Cleveland game, they win by 15. Chubb is putting up usable score. Like Mixon, the Bengals got blown out 41-7 or whatever the fuck it was. Mixon had 30 touches, 114 yards. So it's like, unless this game goes crazy out of reach and AJ Brown's going for a 70-yard bomb and they can figure out a way to get him involved or something else happens, he is going to see work here. And if he's going to see work, that's going to increase his chances to put up a usable score. And I've seen it happen. So I think that with the past couple of weeks, I think that people are looking at, okay, Tennessee's on the road. We haven't seen Baltimore in a little bit, but we like Baltimore. We've seen Baltimore blow teams out. So how can I play a running back on this slate at 8-2 in a matchup where I think they might get blown out? And that's going to suppress his ownership. Like, I think he is going to come in lower than we're having this conversation about because of how this slate presents itself. And I think Damian Williams is going to be chalk, but good chalk. People are going to want to play Aaron Jones, and people are, Cook is going to be lower owned than Henry. I do agree with Kev on that. But the upside that you're getting out of Henry in this matchup from what we've seen previously on how teams have handled Baltimore and not straying away from what they want to do, I think gives him credence to get to what you need him to get to. And it's like it's 8-2. It's not like it's 9-5 or 10K. It's definitely reasonable. That's just my feelings on it.
I think it all comes down to ownership, man. I think it really, really comes down to ownership. If he's not carrying any ownership, then yeah, like Maddie's talking about, I'm one of 3 on him. I'm not locking him, but if he's super damn popular, then yeah, he's an easy fade for me.
Fair enough. I think that's fair. Ownership is definitely key, and we will be monitoring that as the week goes on. We'll pop over to wide receiver now, as Kevin's got me heated up as he loves to do, and we'll keep the pod moving along. We got wide receiver Devontae Adams coming in at 7,600 or 7,800, excuse me. Tyreek Hill at 7,600. Hopkins at 74. Those are your top 3 priced wide receivers this week. You got DK Metcalf, the chosen one, at 6,800. Tyler Lockett right behind him at 66. Adam Thielen, who's banged up but should play at least, is what we think at this point, 6,200. And then AJ Brown at 6K. Kev, I'll let you start it off. You haven't been starting off these, so I'll let you start off. Just let us know where you're at right now and kind of what you're leaning to on this slate with some of these higher price or 5K and below. Are there people that are sticking out to you?
I'm 100% in on Tyreek Hill. I think he has that game breaking or that slate breaking upside. Might have the highest ceiling of any non-quarterback on this entire slate. Somebody who can put up 40 plus. So, I think you start with him. I think there's a decision to make now between, the appeal with Metcalf compared to Lockett last week was Metcalf was his one. I mean, his price was substantially cheaper. Now you're looking at a $6,800 DK Metcalf, which I still like. I mean, I don't think that price is that egregious for what he's able to do. Though I do think Tyler Lockett is a little bit more of a sexy play, especially at 6,600. I mean, he dropped pretty significantly from what he was at last week. I think he was at 7,600 last week, so almost a full K down from him. So I like Tyler Lockett at 6,600. Stephon Diggs at 5,600 is just entirely too cheap. I think Adam Thielen should be also higher than that as well. I'm surprised he's still also that cheap. We kind of talked about this last week. I know me and Maddie went back and forth talking about it, but Adam Thielen's a guy that most of the year was, or before his injury was a guy who was 7K plus, and getting him at 6,200 is just a little bit too cheap for me. I already mentioned with San Francisco, they have struggled, especially recently. On the defensive side of the ball with their secondary and everything else. So I think targeting some of these Minnesota wide receivers who are underpriced. I mean, Stephon Diggs 5,600 is ridiculous. And, again, he's somebody with that kind of that 30-point upside on this slate. Other than that, I really like Deebo Samuel at 5,200. I already said I really like Will Fuller. I'm going to want to try to pay up at running back. So I think paying down at some of these other wide receivers is where to go. Alan Lazard, and then making a decision here. I mean, Sammy Watkins at 4,300 is almost like tempts you to want to play him, because like 4,300 is so damn cheap. But the dude has been straight garbage for most of the entire season. But McCall Hardman, I think if you're wanting to pay really far down, like I like that matchup, and I think with him that he's somebody that they try to put in a bunch of different situations, try to hit the ball in his hand in many different ways. They will target him deep as well, and so I think he's in play. As far as the sub 4K, there's just nobody that I really want to play. Like I don't know, like a Jake Coomer thing was like a complete dart throw, but like
oh my god,
guys at all in the sub 4K range. I don't mind David Moore again last week, who's now 3,900, but I think that was about as low as I would even think about going.
Derek, where you at? Go ahead.
I mean, dude, I don't have to give you a lot of stats. Adams and Hill are both damn good. I mean, their target shares, their roles, and their offenses. If these games, I mean, the offenses run through both these wide receivers. Hill is it's a matter of fact of how Casey is going to attack the secondary. I mean, last week I was on Cole Beasley because they're 30th in DVOA versus short passes, and that's really part of Hill's game this year. Like, he's not just the deep bomb threat. So going against the Texans, I like the McCall Hardman call, because I think if you're going with a secondary wide receiver and you want to get value and stuff like that, it's him. I could see him being that second wheel tied to Mahomes. If you're stacking Mahomes, going Hill and Hardman is an interesting route, because like if I'm talking about, like we're talking about yards after the catch with the Texans, they give up big plays, but it's not because they go like people just chucking bombs against them. They give up big plays because they can't tackle worth shit. Like, they are third in the league and most yards after a catch allowed, and that's basically Tyreek Hill and Hardman. That's their game, man. That's what's happening. So I like both of them. I'm really big on DK, and it's not recency bias. I think Kevin King is absolute trash. And people want to talk about, oh, you fade wide receiver cornerback matchups and blah, blah, blah. Man, whatever. I'm not about that life. If they want to talk about defense, doesn't matter. You're talking to the wrong damn person. If you don't want to sit here and take the time to sit here and break down cornerback matchups, then, bro, be lazy, and I'll keep stacking cash. But DK Metcalf is going to see Kevin King about 8. They play on the same side of the field. Metcalf plays on one side of the field about 70% of his snaps. And Kevin King is bad. Like, the last 5 weeks have padded his stats immensely. The Packers have played garbage passing offenses over the last 5 weeks. Previous to that, Kevin King was being given it up, man. He's given up, and it's right in DK Metcalf's wheelhouse, man. 9 go routes on the year. 5 of those he's given up for catches. 3 of the touchdowns, all the touchdowns this year for Kevin King have been on ADOTs above 16. That amounts for 20% of DK Metcalf's target percentage over the entire season. So you're talking about a guy that has problems covering deep versus a receiver that is what he does. He runs deep. So I think if anybody talking about, oh, were you chasing points and stuff like that, there's not been a lot. The field is sharper, and that is a fact. And I wonder how much of the field is not willing to run it back with DK Metcalf being like, he's probably not going to do it 2 weeks in a row. And I definitely think that there's a scenario here and a matchup here that he can post back-to-back 30 burgers, and that's going to happen here, man. So I like DK a lot. I love Stephon Diggs this week. His price, his role, everything. Whether or not Thielen plays, it does not matter for me, because Witherspoon, since he has come back from that foot sprain, I do not think this guy is healthy. I know he's not carrying an injury destination, but if you look at his play, it has fallen off a table. This is a guy like weeks 1 through 3 when he was playing, he only gave up a 25% catch rate, 25, and a 74 passer rating. Since he's come back, this dude's been lit up. 57% catch rate, 5 touchdowns on 33 targets. Like, I don't care, especially if we want to talk about the narrative of the Vikings getting blown the hell out. They have the 8th highest passing rate when they're trailing by 9 points or more. I love Stephon Diggs. I feel like people are not going to play him because it's San Francisco. And this is a dude that visibly was pissed off on the sideline. Whether or not Thielen plays, I really want – I'm close to maybe locking Stephon Diggs. So that's how much I'm in on this dude this week. As far as other plays, I love Deebo Samuel. The fact of the matter is that if you're looking at try to figure out where the ball goes for San Francisco, yes, it's a damn headache. But the differentiation between him and every other spot on that team as far as receivers goes, this dude has a floor and ceiling little additive to him in what he's doing on the ground. Since week 13, he's had a rushing attempt in every single game. Over that span, 1.8 rushing attempts per game, 20-ish yards a game. He's had 2 red zone carries this season, and he leads the team in red zone targets. You got to love Deebo, and if you're picking one guy to sit here and do a one-off for the 49ers, it's Deebo for me. And I don't really care if he carries a lot of ownership. I do think he probably does because I think he's probably going to be in a lot of cash game lineups. But as far as tournament plays, I think a lot of people are going to try to get too cute and go with Emmanuel Sanders. And I really think that if you're picking one guy, Maddie kind of talked about Kittle's matchup. It's not really good. The Vikings can be thrown on, and their team is hurting. They did not do great last week because their corners played well. They did great last week, and they beat the Saints because their defensive line saved their corners' asses. Alexander's out this week. Curse is bad versus the slot. He's probably going to miss this game, so they have a warm body they're going to trot out in the slot. Now, Deebo's not getting a lot of love in the slot. He's not playing there a whole lot. But Shanahan is actually a good coach and will take advantage of matchups. So to say that they don't run some 11 personnel and get Deebo in the slot this week, I think is not giving Shanahan enough love and enough credence. I think that people could talk themselves into Kendrick Bourne because, like I said, the Vikings are bad in the slot and they're running out like second and third corners to try to cover that. But I don't see a ceiling with Bourne. If people want to go that way in like 150s, that's fine. But I think my wide receiver pool is going to be very condensed this week. It's Adams, it's Hill, it's Metcalf, Diggs, and Deebo, and I might sprinkle in some Lazard as a one-off depending on how my builds and salary goes because I do like him because Seattle's secondary is nothing that you should be scared about. But that's kind of where I'm at.
Maddie?
Yeah, I mean, you guys have hit the nail on the head at wide receiver. Tyreek's the top guy for me up top. Adams is behind him. So just by that, we know Hopkins is going to go for 150 and 2 scores. I think I prefer Lockett over Metcalf this week. I think that Metcalf was a perfect match made in heaven against Philly. We know you want to attack Philly with go routes. And what Derek was saying is they give up a lot. Green Bay gives up a lot of go route production as well. So I guess that is a boost to Metcalf. But man, we've seen Lockett just take over some of these games where he could get up to 18 targets. And he's always been a guy that I don't want to play when he costs $7K, $7,200. But 6,600, you start getting down into his range of he's a consistent guy. Like you look at his game log is just filtered with double-digit DK points, and that's because he's just highly involved in the offense, and he's going to get you 7 to 9 targets on a weekly basis with the upside of more, especially if the game is a shootout. And we mentioned that Seattle doesn't really have running backs, so if that's the case, and this game does shoot out, you're going to have to have more Lockett involvement in the offense, and we've seen Lockett perform at a more efficient level than anybody in the NFL over the last couple of years. I think he was playing hurt for a little bit towards the end of the season, so that's kind of why his production tapered off. But he's back to healthy 8, 7, 7, 9 targets over his last 4 after seeing 4, 2, and 3 the 3 games before that. So I like Lockett here, and especially like him if he's going to be lower in the Metcalf. But I do think both guys are in play. I love the Diggs call from Derek. On the same page there. Deebo Samuel, love that call as well. If you're not playing Kittle, I think playing Deebo makes a ton of sense. Even like Kittle's not going to miss the game this week, but if you look at in games that are when Kittle has not been on the field, Deebo is the main guy that gets the boost in terms of target share. With Kittle off the field, Deebo's snaps go from 15 or target share goes from 15% up to 21%. So he's the main guy that they start to look to when Kittle is not the main piece of the offense. So I think if you're playing the Kittle's in the worst matchup on the slate angle, then I think playing Deebo Samuel at 5,200 makes a ton of sense. I think Will Fuller's interesting at 5K. He like Derek said earlier, he scares the shit out of me every time I play him. But we know he's got as high of a ceiling at wide receiver as anybody. Lazard, I would probably only play with Aaron Rodgers. I did my other pod earlier tonight with Bubba, and he was saying that he's seen a lot of chatter on Marquise Brown being chalk this week.
Oh man!
If that's the case, I can't play Marquise Brown despite being 4,400.
But Lazard is a great damn pivot if that's the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, even finding 600 or 800 for Fuller or Samuel makes a ton of sense. But I mean, I get on board with what he was saying, because you look in this range and there's not really anybody here that kind of stands out, except you click on Marquise Brown and he's got the highest, I guess, ceiling of any of these guys, maybe outside
theoretically.
Of
he's only had like 2 ceiling games, and we've been chasing that shit all year.
And like I mentioned at the top of the show, that weather for that game could be nasty. So a guy who relies on a deep ball in a downpour with 20+ mile-an-hour winds is as chalk is not necessarily something I want to put my hard-earned money behind. So, and then the note with David Moore, Malik Turner is back practicing in full with Seattle. So I think that's going to cut into the David Moore snap share there, because Moore has really seen his snap share increase once he became the only other option, because Malik Turner was getting the run before David Moore was, before Turner got hurt. So, yeah, I mean, wide receivers, like we talk about all these 5K and up guys, and it just brings me back to the fact that I don't think I can play Derrick Henry this week because I feel like I need the salary at wide receiver.
Agreed.
Yeah. I was going to mention Marquise Brown. I did not hear about him being chalk, but I do like him. I mean, he's the best option that Baltimore has, and I do want some exposure to that team, and that price tag just looks so juicy. I will say, though, I mean, I did build a team that had Derrick Henry and Willie Snead on it, and it doesn't feel good, but he is the second leading receiver. He's second in air yards, second in targets. And, you know, none of these guys like Miles Boykin or Willie Snead or Seth Roberts, like none of them really feel good. But if we do, you know, get in a position where Lamar Jackson is just throwing the rock to everybody, and Mark Andrews has been limited in practice. So if you think that he's not going to be out there on a majority of snaps, then I do think somebody will fall into a usable score. And these receiver price tags like are priced in a way where, you know, I could see, you know, not having some exposure to them. So I'm still playing around with roster builds, but I did need like 4K to get to somebody else. Excuse me. And so I was looking at Baltimore and seeing if there was anything that I could do with that. And I just think that people are looking at Baltimore and saying, okay, who sees the most snaps? Mark Andrews and Marquise Brown, and then it's a crapshoot. So all of these guys are just going to be in a clusterfuck, and you can't trust them, not at all. But you know, if you're making 20 max teams and anything like that, if you want a dart throw on one of these guys, my personal option would be Willie Snead, just because of the routes that he's running and the target share that he has in relation to the rest of these guys. But other than that, yeah, Lazard, I talked about it before, like 17 targets in his past 2 games, and Rodgers everybody's pretty much on a watch list for Rodgers. I feel like especially in this game, it's a home game. They had to battle hard to get this home matchup. And so if anybody's out there dropping passes, or if Jimmy Graham, you know, is out there running the wrong route, like he is on a short leash with these fuckers. So Devontae Adams, Alan Lazard, and Aaron Jones, mind you guys better be ready to fucking catch the ball, because he is going to be targeting your asses a lot. And at 4,500, you know, why the hell not? It doesn't make me good to play him without Rodgers. As I said, I just think that if you're playing a Green Bay receiver naked, so to speak, I think Adams is the play. and a pretty decent pivot off of Hill. That's garnering some traction. I love building lineups that have both DK Metcalf and Lockett with Russell Wilson in them, because who else is he passing the ball to, really? I mean, I was on the David Moore train with
Hollister
last week.
Hollister, baby.
Hollister, he could be there. But the way that they were running it last week, it just seems like Lockett was getting hot, and it wasn't a good slot matchup at all for Lockett. But he's going to find a way to get his. He was well on his way. It was unbelievable. His over/under on yards was like 64.5. Had 62 in the first half, and then didn't catch another pass, so the under worked. But he was hot. I just like that stack because I'm getting a majority of that. But we can talk about it next at tight end. I don't mind Hollister, but there's just so many other options that I'm going to before I get to him. But if he's there, he's there. I was trying to think if we missed on anything else. Oh, yeah. No, we really didn't talk about Hopkins. I mean, this dude is going to get targets. He has the second best, I think, according to PFF matchup on the week. And it like Maddie said, I think it was Maddie or Derek, one of you guys said to start off, like, or Hopkins go out there and get 150 and a touchdown. And it's like, it just feels that way. If Watson is going to be close, I don't want to play him naked. I would play him with a Hopkins, with a Fuller. I don't think I could play Hopkins and Fuller without, or Watson and Fuller together without Hopkins. But I do think that I'll find myself making at least one or two teams that have a Hopkins, Watson, and as somebody on KC, either Hill or Kelsey, to run it back, because it just seems like, in order, and of course Damian, it just seems like he's going to have to rely on this guy to have it stay close, and I just think he can fall into some production. He almost did against Buffalo as well too. He just always seems to do it. So I do like getting some Hopkins exposure on Watson's teams. All right, let's move. Oh, go ahead.
If Fuller's playing that like center field role, who's taking Fuller's spot?
It's a great question.
And where's Fuller been typically lining up? Has he been playing outside?
He'd be Rashad
slot.
He's slot. That's right.
Oh yeah, Fenton. Yeah,
it's Fenton.
Yeah. Fenton would be doing that. Yeah, that's right. I guess my only thing to add on top of this with Hopkins is that I can't pay the price tag with him this week, considering the other wide receivers, because I feel like he's become more of a floor play. I feel like with him, we haven't seen the same type of ceiling. If I'm paying up in that range, that I think that Adams and Hill present a higher ceiling than Hopkins.
I even prefer Adams' floor to Hopkins as well.
That's pretty fair too. Yeah.
It is shitty that you're not getting that much of a discount on him.
Yeah. And just to add in Marquise Brown, because I feel like this needs to be talked about, because if he's going to be chalk, I dug into Marquise earlier today because I was trying to talk myself into it, man. I'm just like, I feel like we've been chasing the ceiling all freaking year after week one, because it ingrains in you, this dude has this mega ceiling, and then you're just like, oh, I don't want to miss it. I don't want to miss it. But it's like, when have we actually seen it? The only other time he's done shit was versus the Rams, and that's when they put Ramsey on Andrews for most of the damn game. And with Marquise, I was like, okay, maybe it's the ankle. Well, he hasn't been on the injury report since week 14, and his snaps, his routes per game have not seen an uptick. So it's not like that was holding him back. If theoretically we say that he's not on the injury report, that he's healthy right now. So it's not that he's even getting that much more run, like he's been on the field more. So I can't talk myself into Marquise Brown after looking at the numbers and snaps and routes and his opportunities. There's not been an uptick there. So it's Jackson naked if you're going to play Lamar for me.
I do, after thinking about it, I do agree that I think Marquise is going to be chalk. Just looking in this low 4K range, there's literally nobody else to play other than Sammy Watkins or Lazard.
Yep.
Yeah. Our receiver gets ugly real quick.
It gets ugly quick. Yeah.
Real quick. Let's talk about tight ends before we go defenses to lock this up. Tight end position, you got Kelsey and Kittle at the top, followed by Mark Andrews and favorite of the pod, Jacob Hollister here, that was Maddie's boy, at 4K flat. You got Fells. I think people will go back and play him. I think it helped Fells and will raise his ownership that he was on the Millie last week. I think I don't know if I've seen anything on Atkins yet, but I know Atkins getting ruled out kind of helped get people onto Fells in that earlier game. So that would be something to monitor. I'm not going to play him, but I think people would play him on Deshaun Watson stacks. Jonnu Smith goes from being one of the highest priced tight ends to one of the lowest here, or that are usable at 3,400. And then Kyle Rudolph catches that bananas touchdown at the end to win the game. Saw 7 targets, so pretty decent, but the touchdown definitely helped get him to his upside. Jimmy Graham has a great matchup, I guess you could say, going against Seattle, which was, jam in Dallas Goedert with Zach Ertz being banged up last week. Saw 7 targets in his last game. But again, him and Rodgers haven't been on the same page all year. It makes it really tough to play him or to trust to play him. So I don't know how you play him outside of on Aaron Rodgers stacks. He just seems washed. I also saw people talking about if they should play Hayden Hurst or Nick Boyle. You can't trust. You just can't trust it. Like if Mark Andrews was ruled out, whatever. But Mark Andrews on the field, like that dude is only on the field to run routes. Like he's not blocking at all.
Even if Andrews is dead, I'm not even going that way. There's no way. There's no damn way, dude. Like,
I'm playing Hollister, log out,
baby.
Those plays just speak to how much exposure people are trying to get to Lamar Jackson, and then trying to find any rhyme or reason to pair him with some of these guys. So with tight end, Maddie, why don't you kick it off for us in tight end and kind of what you're seeing and what you like thus far?
Jacob Hollister. Okay, I'm done. Who's next?
Yes.
No, but for real. On a slate where we need salary, and we know Kittle's Kittle is, yes, he's about as close to being matchup proof for a tight end as you can be. But Minnesota has faced a gauntlet of tight ends this year. They faced Kelsey, they faced Ertz and Goddard, they faced Hunter Henry, they played Hollister, they played Evan Ingram. And I know there's another big name guy that I'm leaving off, but it's not coming to the top of my head. They've given up 0 touchdowns to the tight end position, playing all those top tier tight ends. I'm not paying 6.2 for a tight end going against a defense that's just not allowing. It's like they get into the red zone and they just suction in towards the tight end position and don't allow any touchdown production there. Sure, he may catch passes between the 20s and have a good yardage total, but he's gonna probably have to score 2 touchdowns really to burn me at 6,200 at the tight end position, because you playing him there, you're gonna have to get kind of gross at wide receiver or probably running back to be able to afford that. So I'm just gonna play Hollister at 4K against a Green Bay Packers defense that's giving up 15 DraftKings points per game to opposing tight end ones. They're allowing 67 yards per game to tight end ones and almost half a touchdown a game to tight end ones. So you're looking at bottom 6 percentile fantasy production to the tight end position, despite a 34 percentile of target share against them. So a very, very inefficient defense against the tight end position. And again, it goes back to I think you got to get that Seattle Green Bay game right. Hollister doesn't cost anything. He's 3rd on the team in red zone targets, and he's played half the year in a prominent role after Disley got hurt. So yeah, it's Hollister for me at tight end at 4K, and I'm just not going to get cute with it. He's got the highest ceiling, and at his price, he's got a good floor too.
Yeah, I would just piggyback on this. It's Hollister lock for me. I get Kelsey and Kittle's ceilings. I absolutely understand, and I'm not saying that they're not in play, but I think that you're looking for value on this slate. And if we're talking about that, the running back position, there's nobody in the 4K range that you're going to sit here and go for. If you're paying up for Kittle or in Kelsey, then how else are you finding the value? We talk about wide receivers. In the 4K range, they're terrible. Like, it's absolute garbage. So if you're looking at a 4K play, Hollister there's nobody that's close to him in that, like, at 4K. Like, yes, Lazard, I get it. But with his matchup, I mean, I'm just going to – Maddie talked about how bad that Green Bay is versus tight ends. They're 24th in DVOA. Here's stat lines that tight ends have posted against them. Caden Smith, 8, 6, 70, and 0. Kittle went for 129 and 1. Olsen went for 898. Dusty-ass Greg Olsen went for 8 and 98. Henry, 7 for 84. Kelsey, 4 for 63. Waller broke the damn slate. Goddard and Ertz combined for 981 and 1. We've seen Seattle use their tight end and use Hollister. I mean, we talk about the funnel and the flow charts and stuff like that. Hollister has been utilized whenever the matchup is called for it. And this week, the matchup calls for it. And if we're looking for value, it's so easy to sit here and lock him in and just get the 6K play at other positions. Because if you're looking at it, okay, if I'm playing Kelsey and you want to play Kittle and you're comparing them and using them and saying, okay, well, for their roles and their 6K wide receivers, there's other 6K wide receivers, or hell, even with Debo, 5K wide receivers that can match that production, but you're saving it with Hollister. So I know Kevin's probably going to come in and squash my Hollister talk, but go ahead, bud.
Nope. I don't have anything else to say. Move forward with defenses.
Did you have a stroke? Wow.
That is fantastic.
I mean, it's very limited. I mean,
I agree with you. I just this is rare for us. I feel like we're building bridges here, Kev.
I mean, you're going to, of course, you know.
I was waiting for some Jeremy Sprinkle action.
The only thing I would say is if you want to get cute, is instead of playing Tyreek, would be dropping down from Tyreek and playing Kelsey in his place and playing which should save you a little bit more money. But they're about a $1,200 difference between the two of them. We already talked about Houston being terrible against the short man in the middle, intermediate passes. So that's where Travis Kelce eats. And so if you want to play Travis Kelce at 6,400 versus Tyreek, I think that's certainly a place you can go to and to get a little bit different, in a stack versus, a Tyreek. So, yeah, I mean, but it's going to be tough to pay up for these. If that's not what you're going to do, it's almost impossible to kind of get to these guys with everything else that you want to do, with everything being so tight. And so, playing Kelsey or Kittle is going to be really tough. So what are the other options? It's fucking Jacob Hollister and then a bunch of fucking bums and that you're hoping for. If Jimmy Graham gets for 3,300, if he gets you 3 catches and 40 yards, you're not mad about that at all. You're probably pretty fucking happy about it, to be honest with you, because there's not much on here. There's not much upside. Top 3 guys. Past that, I think most of them have somewhere in the range of 3 to 15 fantasy points.
Yeah, I agree. Go ahead, Kev.
3,400. If you want to play him, he's a red zone, one of the red zone targets, 3,400. I would have. But I don't love any of these guys that are in this range at all whatsoever. And like I said, so, if Jimmy Graham, you play him, who's Seattle's pretty bad against tight ends, and he goes out and gets you, like I said, 4 for 40, sweet. You're thrilled.
Yeah, I'll just close it up with tight end and just saying that, I get paying down. But when you're looking at guys like Mark Andrews and Kelsey, who book in Kittle there, in Pro Football Focus, and Kev, shout out to you for giving me these stats here. So the deep passing stats for the tight end, for targets on 20 yards or more, Mark Andrews and Kelsey and Jimmy Graham actually are the only tight ends that show up on this list. Kittle does not. This is on 50% or more deep targets. So Mark Andrews had 18, Kelsey had 12, Jimmy Graham had 10. Mark Andrews had 8 receptions on those 18 targets. Kelsey had 8 on 12, and Jimmy Graham had 2 on 10. Mark Andrews was right behind Kelsey in yards, 274 to 224, and then touchdowns, 3 for Kelsey, 4 for Andrews. Jimmy Graham had, of course, 0. So when you're looking at big plays and what the tight end position could offer, Kittle, it gets targets, but they are in the middle of the field and kind of as that security blanket for Jimmy Garoppolo. Kelsey and Andrews will actually go out there and legit be running wide receiver routes for these teams. So I do like those 2 guys more at the top end if I am paying up. And I do like Kelsey more because I'll have more exposure to Pat Mahomes than Lamar Jackson. But I just wanted to say that. Derek, I know you got to hop off, so I appreciate you hopping on. And any last words before we let you go?
Yeah, sorry guys, I got to roll to the real 9 to 5. But no, man, this has always been a blast. Thank y'all for having me again. I hate I gotta bus out here early, but it's always awesome, man. Thank y'all. It's good to be able to chop up a short slate and find some leverage on some good spots here.
Just give us
really appreciate it.
Just give us your one play for the Millie Maker that we're going to put together, or whatever the lineup we're going to put together. Who's your play?
It's Stephon Diggs. Put him in there, baby.
All right.
On Diggs and Derek's name.
Hell yeah.
You got it. We got you. All right. That's Derek Brown, DBro_FFB is where you can find him on Twitter. Derek, appreciate you as always hopping on, making time for us.
Absolutely, guys. Much love.
Thanks,
Later, buzz.
All right, fellas, we're almost there. We're closing out the podcast with defense. Just talk to me about who your favorite defense is. Cav, start with you.
I like the Packers at 2,800. I don't know. I would just rather probably just pay down and take some shot at a Packers or maybe a Seattle defense. But I mean the Ravens certainly at 3,600. Probably the best matchup on this slate. Next to, I think San Francisco is going to be pretty popular at 3K. But I would just rather probably just play the Ravens, Packers, or Seattle. I think teams that can rush the passer.
No no KC for you?
I mean, but they're 3,200. They're the second highest price. I mean, I probably won't even play any Ravens. It'll be very, very small amount of Ravens. Just paying 3,600. I'm trying to save as much money as I possibly can. I don't mind the Chiefs whatsoever. Home matchup, 9.5 point favorites. A lot of things make sense. Kansas City's a super aggressive defense. They're going to sell out to start. They're going to send the house as much as they possibly can. And so, we know that Deshaun Watson tends to take a lot of sacks. So, they certainly could wrap up 5 to 6 sacks in this game and possibly find the end zone with one. So, yeah, I mean, if you want to play Kansas City, certainly, but it's just tough to play them at 3,200.
Yeah, no, I hear you, Kev. Mine for me is the Vikings. They're 2,700. Talking about saving salary and going with defenses that just have been consistent all year. Minnesota, they are on the road against San Fran, but I've seen Jimmy Garoppolo make mistakes. They're going to try and lean on the run, and I just think they're an opportunistic defense, and they're trying to force fumbles. And what they did last week against the Saints really showed me that they are really coming into these playoffs to play. So at 2,700, I think I can feel comfortable with them getting a couple sacks here on Jimmy G. Hopefully getting a turnover and getting around 7-8 points out of the defense here, with none of these other ones killing me too much. Maddie, what say you?
I think Tennessee is interesting in a bad weather game, if that's the case. 2,400.
Okay.
And if you're fading Lamar at a high price, I mean, you don't want him to break the slate. So, yeah. I always punt defense. That's usually the last thing I fill my team with. So I already know I'm going to need all the salary I can get, like Kev said. So yeah, I think Tennessee is probably where I'm going to end up with most of my builds.
Okay, that's fair enough. Just real quick, with Lamar Jackson being on the other side, I'm not even sure what his sack rate is or how many times he's been sacked this year, but just knowing that he rushes and could be trying to avoid sacks there if he is able to put up points. Howard, what are you expecting for points wise out of this defense?
Well, I mean, you look at it really like throughout if you're looking at each team, I'm not one to pay up for defenses. So the teams that are most likely to, force a bunch of turnovers are the ones that are up top. So like the Ravens or the Chiefs. Or the 49ers, and I just don't see myself getting there. But I mean, if you're playing in a bad weather game against a team that's going to run the ball with their quarterback a lot, I mean, maybe you luck into a fumble recovery touchdown or something, or the ball slips out on a option read. The weird things can happen in bad weather. So I'll take my high variance chances. I just don't see Rodgers doesn't throw interceptions at home. Seattle and Green Bay don't want to play Houston. They can't get any pressure on the quarterback. They're just not a good defense at all. At least Tennessee is like somewhat reasonable of a defense. I guess Minnesota's okay, but they're pretty banged up, and I'm not sold on what they did in New Orleans. I think I'll save the 300. If I had the 300 though, I'd probably maybe take a shot on Minnesota, just to kind of even out my exposures. But yeah, it's Tennessee and Minnesota for me.
Fair enough. Guys, that's the divisional round podcast for the DFS DJ Nation. We are going to get in, even though Derek left us, he did give us one play. So we're going to get in to this Millie build, as it is a tradition. We always do it. Did it last week. Didn't go out so hot for Kevin and I, even with the pivots that we made on Joshua Perkins. But we're here to bounce back again with the TQE. So, Kev, let's get into it. Let's build this Millie Maker DJ Nation team. I'll let you kick it off. Let us know what we're doing. Well, Derek really kicked it off with the Stephon Diggs, but you go ahead and make the second pick here.
Damian Williams.
All right, Damian Williams at 6K goes in. Maddie, you go ahead.
Hollister.
Open slate for me. Do I play Derrick Henry or no? Let's go Pat Mahomes.
I really like the Mahomes-Williams stack and just get all the Chiefs points.
Yeah, I feel good about this. Kev, back on you.
All right. Let's go with Aaron Jones.
So that leaves us $48.75 per player.
Yeah, it gets tight, man. Jesus.
Right.
I guess if we're running Mahomes, I guess just run it back with Will Fuller. That's fine. And if he doesn't play and we don't use Debo, and we've got 200 left over, then just play Debo.
Well, I'm gonna play Kelsey in the flex.
All right. Double tight end. I don't hate that. I think Hollister, you treat Hollister like a 4K wide receiver, and you treat Kelsey like a 6,400 wide receiver on this slate.
Yeah.
Just because of lack of options.
All right, I think this will leave you just enough to probably do what you want to do. So I'm going to go Packers defense.
Yep, and Deebo Samuel.
All right, let's lock it in, fellas. So we got Pat Mahomes, quarterback at the top. Damian Williams and Aaron Jones are running back. Stephon Diggs, Will Fuller, Deebo Samuel at wide receiver. Jacob Hollister at tight end. Kelsey in the flex. And Packers D at 2,800, which leaves us 100 on the table for the Millie lineup, and we are submitting that in right now. Obviously, things can change. We will be monitoring Will Fuller's status as he hasn't been ruled in officially. Is that correct, guys?
They're optimistic that he's going to play.
Okay,
but it sounded like he was close last week. So you would think that he's going to play, but I mean, they haven't really said one way or the other. It's definitely, you definitely got to pay attention to it.
Yeah, we'll be paying attention for it, and haven't even said anything. So let's plug the Slack. Slack chat is free for the DFS DGen Nation. If you guys aren't in it already, hop on Twitter, DM the DGen Nation Pod. We'll get you DFS DGen Nation Pod. We'll get you right in there, or you can DM Kevin at FantasyRat13. He'll gladly get you in too. A lot of fun that we're having over there, guys, and only technically two more slates left of the season, I believe. So really crazy that we're kind of winding down towards the end of the year. But it was fun. It's fun to talk to divisional round, fun to shoot the shit, talk shop with Maddie Dickinson and Derek Brown from the TQE, the dynamic duo there at the TQE. If you guys aren't following them on Twitter, I don't know what you're doing. Derek Brown is Dbro_FFB and Maddie Dickinson at Maddie DTQE. Maddie, for Derek's behalf, you got any last words for us or got anything to plug?
Nah, like I said, this is probably the last slate that I'm going normal volume on before I cut back on the championship slate and the Super Bowl showdown. So looking to go out with a bang, and hoping you guys do the same.
Fair enough. God bless the Super Bowl showdown. You know, shout out to the showdown, because we used to have to play Pro Bowl players, and I did it. So that was not
rough times.
But you know, shout out to the Super Bowl showdown. I'll have some exposure in there, definitely. And Maddie, I meant to ask you this earlier, but is it contingent on any teams making it, or are you definitely like, no matter what, this is the last week you're going heavy?
No, yeah, it's just 2-game slates they get kind of rough. I mean, even this 4-game slate that we're looking at is pretty tight, and it turns into a lot of split pot. And me as a tournament player, you get a lot of people have the same lineups, especially if you're looking at next week, possibly Lamar and Mahomes as the 2 quarterbacks to pay up for, and then on the other side is probably you got Jimmy G, Kirk Cousins, Russ or Rodgers. So.
That'd be crazy.
It'll be a kind of a wonky slate where everybody's just going to stack up Baltimore, Kansas City, for good reason. But it's just I just think that next week's going to be pretty chalky, and you'd have to force yourself into doing something that you don't really want to do. And with that, I'll just play less money on that.
Fair enough. Kev, talk to the people. Any last words on behalf of the DFS DGen Nation?
Just go out there and win that money. I guess we're gonna do another pod next week. I think we are gonna record it on Wednesday. Yep. I believe that's correct. So that'll be the last one of the year. It's been a fun year. Had a lot of fun. We appreciate Maddie and Derek coming on and jumping in with us. It's a lot of fun every week, even though we tend to get into some heated debates because, I'm not a fish and I don't. I'm a little more contrarian, I guess, than others. But and I'll tell you guys why you're wrong. But and on top of that, I think we're like 70 some days away from opening day. So that's when the real grind starts for Maddie. Whenever he's out here grinding, BVP every day, and and then that type of stuff.
Not BVP, but everything else. White Sox looking okay this year.
Hey, I'm trying to tell you. Hey, I don't want to jinx them, but yeah, the White Sox look for real. I mean, the Cubs. It was fun. They had a couple-year run.
Better luck next year. Better luck next year for the Cubs.
You gonna put some money on the future, Kev?
Hey, the Cubs it's so bad. It's bad to be a Cubs fan, man, when the White Sox outspend you. The Cubs haven't signed a single free agent this entire offseason. Spent $0.
Hey, last time we spent it didn't work out so well. So
are the White Sox going to win the Central? Or are they going to lose to the Twins?
I don't know. I think it's tough. Like I'm not all those people that think the White Sox are just a lock to win the Central now. Like they still have a lot of young talent. Things are going to have to come together. Luis Robert, Nick Madrigal are going to have to come together. Their pitching staff is still a little suspect. Let's see how Michael Kopech and Dylan Cease pan out if they can do anything. So there's definitely some.
Eloy's got to be better this year too.
Yeah, and so Luis Robert coming in, and he looks like he could be a stud. But I could see that where things don't go as well as people think it's going to. Maybe they're a year away, but they're really smart with the way they spent the money. They didn't go out and just throw all this insane money for multiple seasons. That most of these guys are signed to 1 or 2 year deals, so they really left themselves a lot of flexibility. because this window is wide open. I think this window is a good 5, 6, 7 year window that they're in. Like, this isn't some short little window that they're trying to maximize. So while they went out and spent a lot of money this offseason, right, I think they spent it very wisely with Encarnacion, who got a 1 year deal with the club option. Cishek got a 1 year deal with the club option. I mean, basically outside of, Grandal. I mean, Maddie's like, hey, I'm out, dude. Like, I got time to listen to this bounce. Anyway, fun. I'm excited to see what the White Sox do this year, but
that's what's up. Well, we appreciate you guys listening once again to the DFS DJ Nation pod for the divisional round. On behalf of the TQE guys, Maddie Dickinson and Derek Brown. Again, you can find them on Twitter at MaddieDTQE and at @D_Bro_FFB, respectively. For Kevin Steele at FantasyRat13 and myself, Ryan Williams, at RyanAlexander_W. We're signing off for the DJ Nation pod. Best of luck to you guys in the divisional round. Catch us in the Slack chat. And if not, we'll see you next week for the championship round. Until then, we out. Peace.